I'm joined at this moment by senior advocate and BJP's nominated MP in the Rajya Sabha, Mahesh Jethmalani. Mahesh Jethmalani, you can look a bit happier. You seem to have had a good day in the Supreme Court today, but it seems this has worked to a script. Let's be honest now. The execution was in Mumbai, but the brains were all in Delhi. This was all worked to the T, the manner in which this has played out.
And Radeep, how have you come to that assumption? I want to know the premises on which you base that very sweeping statement.
Very simply. Devendra Fadnavis is silent for an entire 8 daes, comes to Delhi yesterday, meets JP Nadda and Amit Shah, then in the evening goes to the governor, who asked the government to, the Shiv Sena government to prove its majority in 24 hours, and lo and behold, that's exactly what's happened. Plus, sir, the fact that on Friday night, Devendra Fadnavis, Eknath Shinde and Amit Shah held a secret meeting in Vadodara. So it's all well known. Now let's not say it was a Sena rebellion only. The BJP helped it.
Well, the BJP obviously helped it for sure. I mean, the BJP certainly was interested in forming the government. But we kept arm's length as far as we could. I mean, it was an internal Sena battle. We didn't take sides in court. No BJP MP was allowed to appear in court in these matters. So, as things unfolded, this was not a script. One had to wait and see what happened. There was a disqualification proceeding. One had to see how the Sena handled that. The Eknath Shinde Sena, they went to court. They got a stay on disqualification. And then the business of forming a new government, right? And Rajdeep, that is not a script. That is a democratic necessity, because the previous government was struggling to fight with a minority of legislators. So that's not a script. What you call a script is really a crying need of a constitutional democracy and the need for a state government.
Constitutional democracy going from one resort in Surat to one in Guwahati to one in Goa, finding BJP ruled state, staying away from Mumbai. Let's be honest, you're an old Mumbaikar like me. It's not very edifying, is it? Is this the way politics is going to be fought in resorts?
Well, it's been fought since times immemorial. I mean, I hate to say this, but the Congress party started this resort politics and this hijacking and this defection. So, then they tried to plug the leak by bringing in the 10th schedule, the anti-defection law. And there are so many loopholes in the anti-defection law that these things take place now. And if your only grievance is about resort politics, that's okay. People expect, one has come to accept that, because people know that the kind of violence that was preached and practiced in Maharashtra, you needed protection from those goons.
You made an important point about the 10th schedule. Do you believe that the time has come to relook at that the 10th schedule puts pressure on both the group that wants to defect as well as on a group that wants to hold on to power? That the 10th schedule needs to look at issues like the role of the speaker, the manner in which these defections are organized. Otherwise, you're going to continuously have these kind of resort politics being played out.
But, there are two conflicting interests, Rajdeep. You've got to understand that. And you can never get a perfect system. The old adage, the democracy may not be a perfect system, but it's as perfect as one as you can get. Now, you want to stop defections. You want stability, right? And you want to stop defections. So you have the 10th schedule coming in. On the other hand, there are some issues. There are some issues which are of fundamental importance to legislators. I mean, you might be cynical about this, but certainly the fact is that there was a betrayal of an alliance that came to power, right? Some people were not content about this from the very beginning. They held their peace, right, because they had to. But over time, it festered, and they found that this was becoming counterproductive, that the only people who were gaining from this, right? So it was a question of realpolitik, that the only gainers from the MVA were largely the NCP and to some extent the Congress. The Shiv Sena was a loser. And the second, they were losing their ideological identity. There were two issues here. So this happens then. So as opposed to stability, you have a conscience vote, a conscience decision, right? Or an ideological decision, if you will. And there are two pulls apart. I mean, they tug at each other. So you've got to find a happy balance, and you have the 10th schedule. As I said, it's not a perfect answer to defections, right? But there is also the freedom of a legislator's conscience.
You know, I want to therefore ask you you know, what according to you will make this government different from the previous government? Do you believe that handling Eknath Shinde is not going to be easy? They're going to demand their pound of flesh. Do you believe it would be better at times like this to go back to the people, or am I being too idealistic?
Well, I mean, you know, it is the first effort of every constitutional head, and the governor is the constitutional head, and they are mandated, right, to avoid fresh elections, right? Mm-hmm. So the first effort of a constitutional head, his mandate is to search for a viable government. And I think for the next 2.5 years, there will be a viable government between Eknath Shinde, the independents from the who are formally aligned with the Sena, the BJP and the independents aligned to it, and maybe a couple of small parties. I think it's a very workable alliance, and I wouldn't be cynical about its prospects at all. Okay. In fact, there are less contradictions there because this is more ideologically cohesive than the MV ever was. I mean, I'm told today that Uddhav Thackeray, in a last-ditch attempt, was trying to rename Aurangabad.
He's done it. No, he's done it. He's done it. He's done it. It's renamed as Sambhaji Nagar.
Oh, has he done it? Very good. So, but did the NCP and Congress not oppose it?
No, they didn't. They didn't. Times are changing, Mr. Mahesh Jethmalani. As Uddhav Thackeray said in his speech, the Sena ministers were not present. The Sena ministers were not present.
No. This is not times are changing. This is a desperate measure for a falling government.
Okay.
It's not ideology. It's hope and desperation.
I would tend to agree with you that maybe desperate times call them to make
Rajdeep, for once we agree.
There are lots of issues we can agree on, but for now I would agree that that was a cynical last-minute measure with one eye on the Aurangabad municipal elections that are not too long away. You want to give a final word to us, to those who will say that there is a brazen use of money power in politics, which is also there, that ED, for example, ED cases against Uddhav's people, not against the other side. Does that worry you or not? Or is that again the way politics is going to be fought? Sam, Dam, Danda, Bhed.
Rajdeep, well, politics is to a large extent about Sam, Dam, Danda, Bhed. But, you know, I mean, money and politics, listen, you know, election expenditure violations are legion, right? Does anybody spend only 25 lakh rupees during his election, his parliamentary election? Come on. So you know that this story is as old as the hills, for God's sake. We've all been complaining about it, election expenditures and all that.
Misuse of state power, misuse of the ED. The ED has in the last 1 year targeted people close to Uddhav Thackeray and let off the likes of Eknath Shinde. Apparently,
I have to join issue with you on that because there are courts in this country which I believe function pretty well, right? This argument which has been constantly used by the entire opposition about ED, etc., right? There are two answers to that. One is that the courts have upheld the investigations and the arrests. Now, are you going to say that the courts are not neutral referees? A. B. Will you be maligning the judiciary if you say that? And it would be ill-advised.
No, not at all. Not at all. I have absolutely no, sir. No, Mr. Jethmalani, I actually have no doubt that many of those being investigated have much to hide. My problem is that those who join hands with the government don't get investigated. Then it becomes a washing machine. That's my problem.
But you know, when the BJP was in opposition, you know, when the United Janata Party was in opposition many years ago, times immemorial, when we had issues like that, we used to go to the court and we used to often get results. I don't see the Congress party, right, except on the eve of an election, for instance, or any opposition party, just on the, please look at how things have unfolded, Rajdeep. It's, you know, you just move on. These are all momentary issues. You move from Pegasus to Agniveer to farmer strikes, you know, to Rafale, right? And then they're all forgotten. These are all pre-designed issues. The opposition does it for power. They don't really do it because they want to clean up politics. And if they really, let me tell you something, this opposition today is much more mired in corruption than anybody in the ruling party. So they don't have the legs to fight corruption.
Okay. Let me leave it there. That's an interesting debate that we will take forward in various ways at times where we will disagree with each other and agree to disagree as always. But I appreciate...
I'd love to cross swords with you, Rajdeep, anytime.
Anytime. Thanks, as always, Mahesh Jethmalani. Good to have you on the show. And on a day when the BJP has won, you've every reason to be beaming.